On Talking with Dr. Donna, we focus on 4 pillars of health to help build a generational health network to end the cycle of premature death in the Black community. I created Talking with Dr. Donna as a way to educate as many people as possible and give accurate information from a trusted physician. Go to Talking with Dr. Donna and get accurate information. And then share that information with your family and friends. And if you like what you see, like my channel and subscribe. Remember, every Thursday, keep your appointment with Dr. Donna. To season 3, second episode of Talking with Dr. Donna. Thank you so much for joining. Remember, you have an appointment every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. with Dr. Donna. So good evening to all of you who are out there watching. It's so good to see you tonight. And I want to interact with you a little bit tonight, so let me know that you are here. For those of you who are just starting to follow me, I appreciate it. These are the different ways in which you can follow me. I am on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, but definitely want you to move over to my YouTube channel and subscribe to Talking with Dr. Donna. Then hit that bell icon so that on Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. it will light up and let you know Dr. Donna's live. You're about to get some information. Come on and join. So thank you so much. As you know, our goal is to build a generational health network. And the reason why we want to build a generational health network is so that we can end the cycle of premature death in Black communities here in America and across the diaspora. We want to make sure that we're not continuing this cycle of premature deaths. So our 4 pillars of generational health are a spiritual pillar of health. We focus in on a mental and emotional pillar of health. We, of course, focus in on our physical health, and we focus in on environmental health. And you know, this is Climate Change Week. This is Climate Change Month. There's all these different marches that are going on and happening around climate change. And the reason is because we know that our environment actually does impact our health. And I want you to be as healthy in your environment as possible. So that is our generational health pillars. Want to make sure that you recognize that this is Latinx Heritage Month. So I don't know if you can see my shirt, but it is in Espanol for Latinx Heritage Month. It says más amor, por favor. That means we need to spread more love, please, in this world. So a shout out to all of our Latinx brothers and sisters. We honor you and the heritage of Latinx this month. Also, wearing the red, you see how Dr. Donna combined the two? You see that? Red, Latin, Espanol. So we are celebrating that this is Sickle Cell Disease Awareness Month. So we want to make sure, if you did not keep your appointment last week, you missed Dr. Courtney Fitzhugh, who is a physician scientist with the NIH, has her own lab, and what she does is research about curing sickle cell disease. So if you missed your appointment last week, I encourage you to go on, look at my show from last week and make yourself more aware of sickle cell disease. That's it right there. That's her right there, my little sister, Courtney Fitzhugh, and learn about sickle cell disease and share it with people in your network, your family, your friends, your doctor. Share it so that you understand what sickle cell disease is, and you can help to stop the spread of misinformation about the disease and about those who are inflicted with the disease. And so that you yourself, if you are of childbearing age, there's some tips in there for you as well that you should pick up and use as you're preparing to have children. All right? All right. So how many of you, I'm going to ask you something here, and I want you to comment, please. I want to know how many of you out there think that the pandemic is over? Let's see. Let me know if you think the pandemic is over. I'm waiting for your comments. We've seen so many people talk about the pandemic being over. Our president of the United States has talked about the pandemic being over. Lots of our professionals have talked about the pandemic being over. And so it makes sense that people would think that the pandemic is over. So I'm curious for you who follow me. You probably know what I think, but I want to know what you think. Do you think the pandemic is over? Oh no, Liz, okay? No, Carmen. Knowing that the pandemic is definitely not over. Yes, it's not over. But let me tell you where we are now. So let's put up that slide and give some information about where we are right now. So in Alameda County, our transmission level is low, and this is as of last week. We have a 6.2% test positivity rate. What does that mean? That means that of all of the tests that are going into the public health department lab, only 6.2% of them are coming back positive. Now that's very different. If you remember, sort of at the height of the pandemic, we were at 10%, 12%, 20% test positivity rate. So we are definitely coming down in terms of our the number of tests that we're seeing positive. But these are tests of people who are going into the lab, right? I talked about this last week as well. These are people who are actually going into a lab physically, getting their blood drawn and getting a test. But what about all of us who are at home taking the test at home? Are you uploading your test results anywhere? I don't think so. So we really don't know what the rate of transmission is in our community. I personally know, and I see lots of folks out there. Sita says that she knows lots of people who have COVID right now. And I can say the same thing. I think of the entire time in the pandemic, I have not known as many people who have COVID before than I do right now when we're supposedly out of the pandemic. But because all of the powers that be saying that the pandemic is over, there are things that are happening that impact you and your ability to care for yourself and your other family members. Number one, something that's going into effect tomorrow, the 24th, is that masking will no longer be required or necessarily even recommended in many of our institutions. They are now going to become optional. So when you're in a public facility, when you're in a restaurant, when you're in the movie theater, when you're at a concert, the masking is now optional. The only place where masks are still going to be required are in hospitals, in rehab facilities, and in nursing homes. So places where people are at an increased risk of developing disease. Other than that, masks are going to be optional. That means even in your doctor's office and in your clinic, they may still make masks optional as you go in. We just wrote a letter with multiple physicians, including myself and community leaders. We wrote a letter to BART today, asking them to continue their masking mandate on the BART trains. We'll see what BART says, but hopefully they will recognize that there are so many people in such a small setting, in such a small area, that it will be important to keep our masks on. So, but what does that mean for you, that masks are optional? That means you get to choose, right? And so what you need to do is make that decision for yourself, recognizing that we're not out of the pandemic, that COVID is still around. There are still people getting sick from COVID. There are still people who are dying from COVID. So you have to make that decision for yourself. For me, personally, if you're going to ask what Dr. Donna does, anybody who knows me know I always wear my mask, and I am going to continue to wear my mask because we're entering into fall. We're going to be into flu season. We're going to be into the winter surges of all sorts of different respiratory diseases. I want to be protected, not just from COVID, but from the flu and from the multitude of other illnesses that are going to be rampant this fall. So masking is optional starting tomorrow throughout California and in Alameda County. So make that decision for yourself. Testing. I still want you to make sure that you have supplies of tests at home. And we talked about whether or not, the expiration date that's on your home test, if those are the true expiration dates. So these are some websites, if you can put it back up so people can full screen. These are some websites, take a picture of it, screenshot it, so that you can go, depending on what your manufacturer is for your actual test, you can go and you can see if your test is truly expired, okay? And don't think that they're just sort of, oh, we're going to continue allowing you to use these tests and they don't work well. That's not the situation. As they created the test, they continue to test to see if the reagent works, if the test still has its same, usefulness as it did in the beginning. And as they continue to test those tests, if they still do give accurate results, then they've expanded and extended their deadline. So look at what the home test kit that you have. Go to the website, punch in the numbers that they tell you to punch in, and they'll tell you whether or not your life can be extended. So don't throw them away. Go to these websites and let's make sure that you are using a test that, number one, is still going to give you accurate results, and number two, that you can definitely rely on and continue to use. Okay? All right. So that's where we are in the pandemic in terms of masking, in terms of tests. Now let's talk about vaccines. So lots of vaccines that are available. We have 3 vaccines, right, that are available. There's the Pfizer vaccine, which is an mRNA vaccine. That's the new type of vaccine, which should not be new to us now. It's been a couple of years, but that's it. You can use Pfizer ages 6 months and up. And then there's the new Pfizer booster, ages 12 and up, that it can get this new booster. Moderna, which is also an mRNA vaccine, also good for ages 6 months and higher, but their booster, their new bivalent booster, is only good if for 18 years older and up, okay? So if you have a 12-year-old child who you want to get that bivalent booster, you have to go with Pfizer. And then the Novavax, which was a vaccine that was approved a little bit later than the mRNA vaccines, but has been approved now for several months. It is the same sort of old school type of vaccine that we're used to. And it's the same technology for vaccines like our human papillomavirus vaccine and our vaccine that does our diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine. That uses the same type of technology. So old school, if you couldn't really get with the mRNA vaccines and the new technology, well, guess what? There's something that's old school that you can use, that you are used to, that has been around for decades, and now it's here in the vaccine called Novavax. Still a 2-dose vaccine, and it is approved for ages 12 and up. It does not have a booster yet, and it's recommended that if you get the Novavax as your primary series, so shot number 1 and shot number 2, that when you do the booster, you should do the booster with the Pfizer booster. Okay, so those are the 3 vaccines that we have available. Let's look at how good are we? How well are we doing at getting our folks vaccinated? This is one of the key pieces that we have in order to protect ourselves against COVID is vaccines, right? Masks are one. Well, that's becoming optional. So we don't know how many people are going to be masking. All right, so that's one layer of protection. Our second layer of protection are vaccines. And particularly for our children, we really want to get our vaccine numbers up. So let's put this full screen so you can really see it. So we're not doing too hot on folks getting vaccinated. And this is the primary series, and these are people who've been vaccinated as of last week. As you can see, our lowest vaccine numbers are in our children ages that are less than 5. Only about 3% of kids that are eligible for vaccines have been vaccinated. So parents out there who have kids who are less than 5, the vaccines are available for kids less than 6 months. And we've talked about it before with our pros and cons, weighing this new vaccine against the potential of your child getting COVID and getting sick. And we talked about having this conversation with your pediatrician or your family medicine doc about your particular child and whether or not they consider it safe for your child. But if it's considered safe, I strongly encourage you to consider getting this vaccine, because we have seen infants sick from coronavirus. Thankfully, most of our kids do not die, and most of our kids actually don't get hospitalized. But remember what I've been saying, and I will say it again right now, is that the reason why we don't want our kids to get coronavirus is because we have really no idea what the long-term impact is of an infection in their bodies today, and what that will look like in 10 years or 20 years down the road. We know that this virus likes to hang out in our bodies. It likes to hang out in our guts. It likes to hang out in our brains. And we don't know if that's going to be reactivated later on, kind of like chickenpox shingles situation. And it's going to be reactivated into something that causes them illness later on. So we want to protect our kids from this virus, okay? So our young kids are less than 3%, and that's in contrast to our older adults who are over the age of 65. They're almost 87% vaccinated. That's really good news. Now, this is the primary series. So we're now into our booster shots, right? We're actually into our potential third booster shot. This new bivalent booster shot that we have is different than the first two vaccines, right? And the first two vaccines, number 1 and 2, then we have booster number 1 and booster number 2, and now here we are with this new bivalent vaccine that's available. So the fact that you may have been vaccinated in your number 1 and number 2, we know that the antibodies start to wane. So if you haven't been boosted, then your body is not as adequately prepared for battle when it comes up against the enemy of coronavirus as it could be. And that's why they have updated these booster vaccines, and that's why we're encouraging you to go out and get this new booster vaccine that's called a bivalent vaccine. We have options in Pfizer and Moderna. And this vaccine is called a bivalent vaccine because it has the ability to protect against 2 to 3 different strains of the coronavirus. So it can protect, go back to that other slide, please, the last one. There you go, right there. It has the ability to protect against the original coronavirus strain and then its cousins, Omicron, BA.4 and BA.5. Now, I'm going to show you in a little bit why those two strains are important. But again, for this bivalent booster, if you're over the age of 12, you can get it from Pfizer. If you're over the age of 18, you can get the Moderna. It's not authorized for anyone younger than the age of 12. And you can get this bivalent booster if it's been more than 2 months since your primary series. So that means if you're just getting vaccinated for the very first time, you finished shot number 1 and shot number 2, you can wait 2 months and then you can get this bivalent booster. All right, remember, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. I'm going to keep looking over here, seeing if there's any comments or chats here or questions in the chat. I'll try to get to your questions and answer them. Okay, so let's see, why is this bivalent booster? What's the big hoopla about it? Why do we even need it? So if you look at this really pretty but complicated maybe graph, I want you to see, so in the very left side you see the months, right? You see January, and that is January of 2021. January of 2020, 2021, 2022, yeah, Jan 2020. And when we first came out with looking at the strains, and you see that at that point, where primarily our strain was that nice pretty purple. That nice pretty purple is the alpha strain. So that was one of the original strains that our initial vaccines were fighting against, right? Because that was a huge cause of disease, that strain. Then, if you see that blue line that shoots up beyond that burgundy line and sort of takes over, and that was the Delta. So if you all remember that we had the Delta strain and everyone was talking about, wow, look at the Delta strain, it's taking over. And at that time, that's when the vaccine manufacturers started thinking, hey, wait a minute, is our vaccine, does it impact and help to protect against the alpha strain and this new delta strain. And they did those tests and found, yeah, it actually is still working against the delta strain. Then out of nowhere, this new strain called the Omicron came. That's the green. And so you see from January of this last year that this green took over. And you don't see any other color from January up until where we are now, because the primary strain, almost 99% of all infections with coronavirus have been from the Omicron strain. So that's why it's so important and so awesome, actually, that we have this vaccine that will protect against the first initial strain as well as these Omicron strains that have sort of taken over and no other strains are in sight. So that's what this bivalent booster shot does. It's really protecting us against the Omicron, that green, and protecting us against those two really important strains that we are starting to see take over in terms of our vaccine. So let's see if there are any questions out there. Hi, Dr. Yin. So good to see you. Let's see. All right. Hi, Miss Ophelia. Good to see you. All right. No questions. So let's go on to the next slide. Next one, forward. That's it. There should be one. So scroll down to COVID questions so let's recap. Where we are right now in the vaccine, where we are right now in the pandemic. We are not at the end. I want to encourage you to recognize that we're still getting people who are getting infected. There are still people who are being hospitalized, and there are still people who are dying from this virus. So we're not over. Masks are becoming optional throughout the state of California. I want you to make that decision for yourself, whether or not you need to wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask all the time, there are some really dense places where you should probably really consider. In dense indoor places, you should consider wearing a mask. That means movie theaters, that means concerts, that means in an airplane, on a train, on the BART, on the bus system. Those are places where you should really strongly consider putting a mask on because there's so many people in such a small environment. Second, we still have our vaccines. If you're not vaccinated, please have a conversation with your doctor about which vaccine will be good for you, which vaccine will be good for your children. And definitely as we're moving into flu season, know that you can get your coronavirus vaccine and your flu shot together, that there's at the same time, they're going to help you to stay as healthy as possible during this season. And then testing. So if you're starting to feel sick or you feel like you were exposed to coronavirus, help us out. Help your community out. If you're sick or feel like you're, have been exposed, test. Make sure you look at those websites. Make sure that your test is still good. You take the test. If you test positive and you're older than 2 years old, the desire is for you to isolate yourself away from everyone for about 5 days. Test on day number 6. If your test is negative, then you can come out of isolation. If your test is positive, then continue to isolate for at least 10 days. If you're younger than the age of 2 and you test positive, still want you to isolate for those 5 days. But on day number 6, you can end isolation without actually testing if you have a child who's under the age of 2, okay? Masks are going to be your best bet, followed by vaccines, and then really making sure that you have tests and that you have home tests available, okay? If you have any questions about coronavirus, about your isolation, about whether or not what you should do if you test positive, you can always go to the website of our Alameda County Public Health Department to get the latest information so that you can make sure that you are staying on top of it all. No, we're not out of the pandemic in terms of your health, but in terms of health policy, it does look like we are coming out. The public health emergency is slated to end by the end of this year. that means that all of the resources, all of the assistance that we were getting because of the public health emergency is probably going to go away. That means if you had health insurance that you received because of the public health emergency, you are going to have to find an alternative health insurance. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get the actual date of when the public health emergency is going to end. But I will just say this, if you have insurance, particularly in Medi-Cal insurance, please make sure that your contact information is up to date. Your address is up to date with the state, so that when information starts to come about the end of the public health emergency, they are going to mail you information, and so they have to have your correct address. So that's going to be very important to make sure that you can maintain some sort of health insurance for yourself and potentially for your family. All right, so food of the month, as a reminder, is for September. Our food of the month is watermelon. Woo, yummy watermelon. I wish I could eat watermelon all year round. I love watermelon. And guess what color it is? Red. Hey, you see how we do that? Red. But it's got lots of health benefits, loaded with antioxidants, loaded with vitamins to help you with your eyes, to help you with your skin, to help you with your immune system. Has lots of water to kind of help you feel full. So it's a really, really good source of vitamins and antioxidants. We encourage you for this final month that you're probably going to get really good watermelon. Now, I'm from the country, Tulare, you know. So watermelon season ends in September. And I know that we get our fruit from all over the world and all of their greenhouses, and so we can get watermelon year round. But the best tasting, probably I'm going to say highest concentration of vitamins, benefits is going to be this month as your last month. Okay, so make sure if you make something cool and exciting, make sure that you let us know. Put it on my Facebook page or Instagram page so we can all share into your cool, exciting vaccine. I got vaccine on the brain. Cool, exciting recipes with our food of the month. Okay, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, you have an appointment every Thursday with the doctor, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then look for our health tips during the week. And until we see each other again, please, my recommendation, mask up, be safe, get your vaccine boosters, and take care of yourself and your family. Until next week, take care of yourself.